And today I'm going to actually combine three lectures: the Renaissance lecture, Enlightenment, and medicine and technology in the Roman Empire. So we are first going to look at Renaissance. So science during Renaissance, exploration, maps, and a bit of European science and cosmology. The term Renaissance is important to understand, which was used for 100 years of the European civilization from 1450 to 1550, and it is known as the age of the classical period and the age of scholastic science, where many of the thinkers, and there was a growing importance of the bourgeois, where merchants and bankers were involved, and commercial and financial dominance were in Flanders and Italy. So the coming of Renaissance and the Renaissance began to evolve with artists, architects such as Brunelleschi, such as Lorenzo di Medici, Leonardo da Vinci, and all these artists were very well known for their works, literary, artistic, and intellectual development, which began in Italy in the 14th century, which was very much inspired by ancient Greece and Rome, which was rediscovered during the Crusaders. So we have discussed a bit on what humanism is, individualism in terms of intellectual development. There was a crossroads between science and religion. And the Renaissance movement, as we know, originated 14th to 17th century, and it also means a rebirth in France. And it actually began in Florence, Tuscany in the Middle Ages. Now, Galileo Galilei, right? He was very well known as a firm believer of many of Copernicus' work. Uh, as I said, a crossroads between science and religion in the era of Renaissance, sorry, and scientific revolution. He is also, Galileo is also known as the father of modern science. As we look more into Copernicus over here, what is he responsible for? Called the Copernican revolution in terms of distance, motion, stars, of understanding and more in-depth knowledge on the field of astronomy. And science during Renaissance, as Huff states in 1993, his explanations regarding systematic scientific thought even in traditional China. So you can see the types of technology did China use during that time. And the question that Huff asks is, why did China not conquer the world? Okay, looking back at China's science and exploration of the world, we see that China has been the greatest challenge to science, even until today, of the invention of the sundial, invention of water clocks, even over here, the Chinese fire arrows, which were early forms of weaponized gunpowder, which was a very primitive rocket during that time, currently even used, and this is a example of technology. Kepler is responsible for creating the Kepler's law of planetary motion, more into astronomical orbital period of planets, of understanding how planets move, and it is also under the scientific revolution. So this is an example of it, right? Origins of what happened during the Big Bang and the development of galaxy to the cycle of matter, giant star, supernova, and of course the endpoint, even the discussion on black hole. So from 1650, European philosophers began rethinking old ideas about either science, religion, government, economics, which actually led to an era known as Enlightenment. So as we move into what Enlightenment is also called the Age of Reason. And most interesting is the Enlightenment and Revolution. During the scientific revolution, new ways of thinking had been developed of the world, observation, moved into Enlightenment, where Enlightenment writers accept more new ideas about government, society, religion, science. And the spread of ideas, where a lot of Enlightenment ideas actually came across and moved towards Europe, where Enlightenment ideas sweep throughout the European society and colonial America, and last but not least, the American Revolution, where colonists declare independence and defeat Britain and establish different republics. So this is a timeline of Enlightenment and Revolution from 1550 to 1789. A bit of enlightenment and music, since it was a period of intellectual development. We had conflict of feudalism, capitalism, even aristocrats, and how people look towards elites compared to the economic and social classes at that time. And during the 16th century, the question of rights and duties of an individual was also very heavily debated. We move to the Reformation. So Reformation, as I have explained during class, was actually keywords. It's a reformation of a split of the Christian church, which happened. Many people were unhappy about how the Christian church was in terms, and they wanted to reform Christianity. So we have the religion of Protestants started a new religion. And causes of reformation, of course, we can see in terms of social, political, in terms of economic, and also religious, of how the Roman Catholic Church had once dominated the religious life. So we start a new religion called Protestant, who they call themselves Protestants, and it was led by Martin Luther over here. Okay, so Martin Luther had a lot to do with this new church, and also the Church of All Saints, and how it came about, the Reformation. So Paracelsus here, he is very well known for rejecting the work of Aristotle and Galen in terms of traditional systems, in terms of believing disease was caused by chemical imbalances, and he studied most of the works of Aristotle, Galen, and he believed that the art of medicine has its roots in the heart, where the art of medicine consists of amusing the patient while nature cures the disease. This is a bit more on the body of scientific revolution, as well as the development of the Ottoman Empire, as well as the Mughal Empire over here. Akbar the Great, Shah Jahan, and all religious types of harmony between Muslim, Hindus, and Sikhs, and how it has evolved over time. Right, we will then move on to, as I said earlier on, perhaps looking more into Enlightenment or the Age of Reason, and a bit on science and the bourgeoisie, right? Looking into what Karl Marx has to say, the different types of social classes over here. Particularly, this is something you can further read on, the Newton laws and universal law of gravity, and we move into the major Enlightenment era. So we had great thinkers like Voltaire, we had Rousseau, who argued that society was based upon reason rather than faith and Catholic doctrine. And we have radical enlightenment, which was inspired by Spinoza, individual liberty, freedom of expression, eradication of religious authority. So these are a few many enlightenment writers and thinkers had backgrounds in the sciences, and they associated with scientific advancement during that time. So there, as I said, a clash between science and religion. Right, some of the ideas we have here were the impact during Enlightenment. Of course, most thinkers did not advocate equality. Of course, they are different. They differentiate many of these debates and arguments based on race, gender, or class. And famous Enlightenment thinkers like Hobbes, you need to know what in his work or his argument was more based on absolute sovereign in the society. People like Locke, English philosopher and physician, and he's also known as the father of liberalism. His political theories on social contract theory. We also have Montesquieu, a French lawyer here, different types of laws, the spirits of law, which was made famous by him. And he argues that executive, legislative, and judicial functions of government should be assigned to different bodies. We have Voltaire, French Enlightenment writer, historian, who came up with many essays regarding or surrounding social structure. And Rousseau over here, a great philosopher, writer, and even a composer. Perhaps one feminist, or even here we have more human women's rights, Mary Wollstonecraft here, an English writer, a philosopher, looking more into her writings actually address the middle class and represent a class bias, and also the treatment towards poor. Many scholars of feminism still debate to what extent her argument went on to. So, does she call for equality between the sexes, or such as morality? So we have two social classes over here. I think you know the definition of bourgeoisie and also bourgeois and proletariat. Okay, the two differences between here, working class, capitalists in a society, how Marx says one has freedom, half of modern, where these each class is dependent on each other over the, or even regarding the overthrow of control of production. And some of the characteristics in terms of clothing, the ways of life, their attitude, in terms of they were interested in theater and opera, dining out. It all had to do with the association of economic status, image, and aristocratic taste. And this is an example of how society was in the 16th century. All right, moving on. Science, technology, and medicine in the Roman Empire. We ask ourselves, why did people invent the number systems? And was it the curiosity of the human mind or the desire to improve conditions of life? So civilization has made it very easy over time. We have evolved, and it explains to us why it is important for us to have a number system in order to measure seasons, to make it into a calendar, to understand the history of invention and improvement, technology, and also understanding the natural units of time. So we know how to measure calendar of days, weeks, months, and years, and all these are important because it centers around our experiences that we have, phenomena that we have. All right. So, for example, the concept of seasons exists in many societies. This is something you can reflect on, whose civilization will end up and lasting why, which is very much connected to time. And this is an example of the Julian calendar. So, introduced by Julian calendar, brought in terms of, we all know very well how many months in a year, where he brought the system of calendar, early old Roman calendar based on the cycle of moons and lunar calendar. We also have the Egyptian calendar, Roman calendar over here, where we have the 12-month lunar months, which is 354 days. So these are just examples of measurement of time, the nature units of time. Something that you need to understand and also revise on is on the rise of democracy. What is democracy? Whether it works, is it there or alive today? These are some examples of Greek science under Rome. So you can see all the types of technologies that they use. We have different social classes during that time as well. And the types of Roman medicine. Okay, the forceps, the bleeding cup, all these type of medical instruments from the Roman Empire show that Roman doctors had many surgical skills. However, Romans' major contribution to medicine was in public health. So a lot of very relevant until today. And of course, the work of most famous Galen over here, born into a wealthy family. At the age of 16, he started to study medicine. Comes from a very wealthy family, and very important that he introduced the theory of four humors, treating colds and fever using heat. Cold, heat, and weak people were given heart exercises, and also the heart is the origin of blood vessels.